Every caregiver starts from a different place, and where you begin will shape everything about your experience. Some caregivers are unaware that they are caregivers. Others have skills but have not accepted the calling. Some are willing but overwhelmed because they don't have the training. Without a clear framework, you'll keep guessing and stay stuck. That's why today I want to walk you through a path that will help you identify where you are and show you your next faithful step forward. Hey, Christian Care Companion. Welcome to Dementia Caregiver Support for Christians, the podcast that helps you when you're struggling to communicate and it feels like you don't know what to say without lying. When you're spread too thin, pulled in every direction, and don't feel like you can keep up. And when your conscience feels burdened and you feel guilty, like you're failing God or even failing your loved one. Now, before we start, remember this. Caregiving isn't random. It is actually a calling. But you don't have to walk it alone. The Christian Dignacare Society gives you tools, support, and fellowship with other Bible-believing Christians, all for a one-time, lifetime membership of less than $100. Join us from the link in the show notes or on our website, thinkdifferentdementia.com, and learn how you can steward this season with clarity and peace. Now, let us also talk about our next Ask the Dementia Coach. If you have been listening to this podcast, you know every other episode is a coaching style episode. And I'd love to invite you to our next Ask the Dementia Coach, which will be October the 18th at 3 p.m. Eastern. So if you'd love to sign up for that, the link is thinkdifferentdementia.com/ask, A-S-K. And without further ado, let us hop into our next episode, 291, how to go from resentment to contentment as a Christian dementia caregiver. Many, many caregivers don't even realize that they are a caregiver. Some caregivers have the skills that they need, but they may not have actually accepted the fact that they are a caregiver. While other caregivers are deeply committed to being a caregiver, but feel overwhelmed because they lack the skills they need to actually be an effective caregiver. This is why we have to stop and take a look at where we are in our caregiving journey, which is one of the phases of the Dignacare method that I teach. It's literally stopping to take stock and assessing where we are, because you cannot steward your caregiving season well until you know where you're starting from. The Contented Caregiver Framework will give us a simple way to identify where we are starting from, or sometimes it gives you clarity as to why your family might not be on the same page. And this will show you how, by God's grace, we can continue to grow in our contentment as a caregiver while we are navigating dementia caregiving. So the first one we're going to look at is somebody who is not ready and does not have the actual skills to be a caregiver. This person starts out complacent. Often they do not even realize that they are a caregiver. They may say things like, well, I'm just helping out. Or they're unaware of the weight of what is actually happening. Maybe they don't even have a diagnosis. Sometimes our family members live here where they are denying or avoiding the reality of the changes that we see in somebody we love. So this person is not ready and they do not have the actual skills they need in order to be an effective caregiver. Proverbs 12, verse 15 says, "The way of the fool is right in his own eyes, but a wise man will listen to advice." So when a person is complacent, they are unaware. They don't see themselves as a caregiver. They assume that everything is just fine. Like the fool in Proverbs, they believe everything is under control when it obviously is not. And this person might resist counsel. Family and friends may point out to them that they are actually in a caregiving role, but they dismiss it. They say it's not true. The wise path is to listen to counsel. Proverbs contrasts folly or foolishness with wisdom all throughout the book of Proverbs, right? And when we become aware that something is wrong, that is when we are open and able to then receive counsel or advice. Now, God is very gracious to us when He opens our eyes and makes us aware of being in this specific position. When you recognize the role as a caregiver, it is the first thing that has to happen before you can go from complacency to growing in grace and stewarding this journey in a more effective way, both for your benefit, but for God's glory, right? So being aware that you are a caregiver is a way that God is being gracious to you. And God opens our eyes to this so that you can walk in His truth. And sometimes this is very difficult in families because we may have family members who are unaware and they don't see the person. And so, as far as they're concerned, there's nothing wrong. And they live in this space of complacency where they're not ready and they don't have the skills. And the hardest reality for you, if you are not in this specific spot, is that you cannot make people see something that they're not ready to see. It is not up to us to convince the person that there is something wrong. And one step further, it is not up to us to convince the person who is living with dementia that there is something wrong. Did you know about 80% of people living with dementia have an actual condition called anosognosia? It's a big, fat, long word, which literally means the brain does not have the ability to see the changes that you are seeing. And so trying to convince the person who is living with dementia that something's wrong is not necessarily going to happen. And quite frankly, all that does is break the relationship that you have with that person that we are so much building our ability to be effective caregivers on is this relationship. So if you find yourself reasoning with somebody living with dementia, I ask you to stop. Stop reasoning with them. They're not going to see it. I know this is hard. It sneaks up on us. I have done the same thing. I have made this mistake. But my request of you is relationship first. Maintain the relationship. Be honest. Be transparent. Meet the person where they are emotionally and never, ever, ever lie to the person who is living with dementia. We're causing a lot of what we see. But anyway, I kind of transgressed there, but I thought it was important. So remember, if you don't see yourself as a caregiver, the first step is just even recognizing that you're helping someone, recognizing that you have a new role, and then only can you start to take faithful steps. The second place that we're going to look at is the person who is not ready and very, very skilled. This person is capable and they are competent at the tasks. They can do the caregiving tasks. They might have been like me. I started in this capable and competent place. I was extremely skilled because of my background as an occupational therapist, but I was not at all ready to be a caregiver. I was reluctant in my heart. This person can do all the things, the skills, but they have not yet accepted this as a actual call that the Lord has placed in their life. And what that results in often is resentment. Now, episode 275, which was just maybe a couple months ago now, is a deeper dive on the calling of being a caregiver. In James 4, verse 17, it says, "So whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him it is sin." This person who is capable and competent, but not ready and has the skills, they know what it is to be a caregiver. They have the knowledge, the head knowledge, but they, for whatever reason, are reluctant. They may feel like they're missing out on their own life. They may not want to step into this specific season because of other factors. So they do the tasks, but they don't actually accept this as God's providence in their life. James actually calls that out as sin. And I know for myself, and I can only speak for myself, I know when I was this capable, competent, very skilled, and not ready caregiver, I was sinning. I knew that I was called to this, but I didn't want to do it. And so when you know what the right thing is to do, and then you fail to do it, that's disobedience. And I had to confess that specific sin. Dear Christian, you are called to confess your specific sins specifically, not just, Lord, forgive me of my sin, right? If you know that you have a specific sin, you're specifically required as part of our obedience to name that sin and to confess it. And so I had to confess that I did not want to do this. I had a lot of reluctance in stepping into the role of a family caregiver. And this verse in James exposes our reluctance when you're struggling with this. The issue wasn't for me that I wasn't able. I was very able. It was that I did not want to surrender, because what that meant was moving, downsizing, coming up with other strategies, either forcing my parents to move or me moving, all of these things. But the reality is, once I accepted that call and I accepted that I needed to be obedient, then and only then did my journey change. That was when God transformed my feeling reluctant and resentment into feeling content. Because when you are doing all these things from a discontented perspective, you are exhausted because not only are you fighting the world, but you're fighting your own flesh too, right? And so God calls us not only to perform the tasks of being a caregiver, but to accept that sometimes He gives us this as an assignment and it is only for a season. And it is very role dependent. So just because somebody in your family needs help does not necessarily mean that you are the person who is actually being called to be the 24-hour caregiver. Sometimes the Lord does call you directly, and sometimes He will call another family member. But if He is calling you to be the direct caregiver, we cannot live in refusal of that call. I'll use myself as an example. Literally in the span of an hour-long conversation with one of my private clients, I walked out of the room saying, after I had said for decades, like anybody who knows me knows that I have said this a lot. I said, I will never live with my dad. Well, guess what? In the span of an hour, the Lord changed my heart, and He's the only one that can change our hearts. The Lord changed my heart, and I walked out and I told my husband, we need to move in with my dad. And so that has been part of my transition this summer, moving out, downsizing further, and moving in with my dad, because I am in a season of caregiving, and my father is not a believer, and I believe I am being called to the mission field in his home. And so we can go from just going through the motions and doing the tasks to embracing this as God's calling and finding contentment, right? The third thing we're going to look at is when you are very ready, but you lack the skills to actually provide the care. You're committed, you've accepted the calling, but you don't actually have the actual skills that you need in order to provide the right level of care. This person is very good and stepping up and doing everything, but they're often overwhelmed and exhausted from making decisions. They say things like, I'm very willing, but I really don't know what I need to do next. They feel stuck. They feel stuck and overwhelmed. And Proverbs also speaks to this. Proverbs 19 verse 2 says, desire without knowledge is not good, and whoever makes haste with his feet misses his way. So this person is committed, very ready, and do not actually have the skills that they need in order to be an effective caregiver. They are struggling, but they've accepted the call. They're willing, they know they're a caregiver, and they're eager to serve, but they don't know exactly what to do, which leaves them overwhelmed and making mistakes. Now, Proverbs warns us against zeal without wisdom, because when we have desire to do something, but we don't know how to do it, it's not actually necessarily a good thing. When we rush in and try to do things when we do not have the training, can and often does lead to burnout and making mistakes. For this particular caregiver, the issue is not their heart, it is equipping their hands to do the skills. God will honor your willingness, and He will provide you with wisdom so that you will be able to do this for the long term. The hope is that you learn the skills that you need in order to do the tasks. For example, learn how to communicate, learn how to do the transfers, learn how to help the person with whatever the specific task is that needs to be in that specific place. And when you do that, you will have the clarity in order to sustain this over a period of time. Now, if this sounds like you, if you are the committed caregiver and you've accepted the call, but you feel overwhelmed because you don't actually have the skills to be an effective caregiver, that is exactly why we started the DigniCare Society. It is a $97 lifetime membership. This is the lowest barrier to entry that I could think of for family caregivers, because something I have learned now over months and a few years of doing this is many, many people who take action and change have some financial skin in the game. This is not a lack of knowledge. The knowledge you need to be an effective caregiver, you can Google, you can find it for free online, but you're going to spend hours and days and weeks and months of your life figuring it out on your own. But for a $97 lifetime membership, this is where you get access to practical tools and skills, and allows you to be in a community of other Christian caregivers where you can get support from me and others in our community. Because it does take some level of effort to become better at anything you do. Just before starting to record this podcast, I have started trying to work on my own health again, stewarding my health. And so I have been exercising, and I'm trying to do what's called movement snacks. And so I did about 5 to 7 minutes worth of exercise, nothing strenuous, nothing to really break out a sweat. But I do know that if I want to get fit, I actually have to expend effort. I have to do something. If you want to learn the skills of being a caregiver, you do have to do something. And so my invitation to you today is join the DigniCare Society for $97. It's less than dinner out for 2 people, a nice dinner out for 2 people. This is where you will start to get the skills you need. So the Lord will equip you with wisdom, but the Lord also will give you means. And I hope in your specific journey as a Christian caregiver that I am one of those means for you, because I know for a fact no one else is talking about dementia and dementia caregiving specifically in this way. This is not a medical model. This is not a caregiver-centric model. This is a relationship-centered model based on 30 years of being in the medical model, of 30 plus years of being a family caregiver, and as a Christian. And so I hope that the Lord will use me and the words that we speak on this podcast to help you navigate this from a biblical Christian worldview, and not as the world sees dementia, but as the Lord sees dementia in our lives. So go from feeling I'm stuck and I don't know what to do to I know what I need to do and I have the skills so that you can be confident in this journey. Now, the last one that we're going to look at is what I hope every Christian in this journey becomes, and that is the contented Christian caregiver, where you are ready to be the caregiver and you have the skills that you need in order to provide the care that you're being asked to give. So this person has accepted the Lord's call and they are growing in skill. Many of the caregivers in my communities are these contented caregivers. They are growing in skills. They are growing in the fruit of the Spirit. They can say, I'm finding peace, and I might even be thriving because I've set myself up to thrive in the season. Is it easy? No, but it can result in growth and fruit of the Spirit, both in your calling and in your actual skills. And this is a part of your sanctification. And so, as I've been putting through together this DigniCare method, the last part of this is growth. It is growth as a Christian, not just growth, not just any growth, not just the world's type of growth, but growth in grace, growth in the fruit of the Spirit, growth in your own sanctification. If you wake up every single morning as a Christian and you are not different from the day before, you are not growing. We should never be the same. We should constantly be mortifying the flesh, the sins in our life, and growing into more like Christ. And so this journey as a caregiver is a part of your growth. And when you are a contented Christian caregiver, you are ready and you have the skills. Scripture says in 1 Timothy 6, verse 6 and 7, but godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing, and we cannot take anything out of the world. So when you have accepted the call and you were growing in your actual skills to care, you're ready in your heart and you're ready in your hands. And you can see that in this scripture, Paul ties contentment to godliness. And I don't know about you, but we're all called to become more godly every single day. True gain isn't in what we accomplish or what we accumulate in the world, but it is in actually living out this particular caregiving season faithfully before God. And your perspective as a Christian navigating specifically dementia care will shift everything. We do not bring anything into the world, and we will take nothing out of the world. Caregiving, being a caregiver, is part of God's work for you. And I'm not saying your works save you, but what I'm saying is God gave you this task. This verse will reframe this from that contentment is not necessarily the absence of hardship. It's that you are peaceful even in hardship. The hope is everlasting peace. Everlasting peace. It goes from, when is this going to end? It's never going to end. I feel hopeless, to, this is a season. This is a season. And the Lord is preparing me for what is next. So, what are some key takeaways for you today? The Contented Caregiver framework lets you identify where you might be in readiness and skill. If you're complacent, you're unaware, or unready and unskilled. When we are capable, we are very skilled, but very reluctant sometimes to be the caregiver. When you're the committed caregiver, you're definitely willing, you've accepted the call, but you do not have the actual skills in order to perform the tasks that you need. But when you become a contented Christian caregiver, this is where you are ready, you have accepted the call, you're skilled, and you have the actual, you know what to do. You know how to take the next step. And this means that you live in a vastly different place and space, even though your situation and your circumstances have not changed. So, my question to you today is, where do you see yourself in this framework today? Where do you maybe see some of your family members? Does this help you understand why things might be difficult with some family members? And what is the next step that God is asking you to take towards becoming a contented caregiver? Now, if you need a little bit of extra help, I have one opportunity per month for a free workshop and one opportunity per month for the Ask the Dementia Coach monthly question and answer session. The next Ask the Dementia Coach is October the 18th at 3 p.m. Eastern. And so the link is thinkdifferentdementia.com/ask. This will give you an opportunity to actually come receive real coaching of one specific problem that we will unpack. And I would love to see you come to the next one. And as I try to remember to end all of my episodes, may the Lord bless you and keep you. And I really want you to know that I do pray for you. I pray for some of you guys by name. I pray for the community. And I hope that the Lord will bless this podcast, not for my sake, because the thing that I have realized, I do this for God's glory and for your good. And so I pray the Lord's peace upon you today, and I will see you in our next episode.